The ballroom shimmered with light, every glass raised to honor your brother's perfect wedding. Then, in front of everyone, your father's voice carried across the table. "When are you going to catch up?" Close quote. In that moment, the applause faded, leaving you standing in the shadow of comparisons that had haunted you since childhood. But behind your quiet smile was a truth no one at that table had ever imagined. This isn't just a story of family favoritism, it's a journey of finding your own worth when others refuse to see it. Have you ever felt invisible in the place you most long to belong? If this story touches your heart, a gentle like and subscribe will keep us connected. The silence that followed your father's question seemed louder than the orchestra in the corner, louder than the clinking glasses, and louder than the applause filling the ballroom. His words weren't new. They were echoes of years spent in comparison. You stood there smiling, glass in hand, but inside you carried the weight of being measured against someone else's perfect image. That night wasn't the beginning of your story. The truth is, it had been unfolding for decades, starting in a small house on a quiet street in Burlington. The summers were long and warm, evenings buzzing with crickets, the air filled with the scent of fresh-cut grass. That house, though ordinary on the outside, was the place where favoritism slowly carved invisible lines through your family. You were a child who loved to create. Hours slipped away as you filled page after page with sketches. Cats with eyes too big for their faces, robots who secretly planted flowers, trees that danced in the wind. Each drawing was a secret plea for attention. You hoped your parents would notice, that they'd smile with the same pride they reserved for your brother. But their gaze never lingered on you. Jacob, your older brother, was the family star. At the school fair, he set up a lemonade stand. His easy charm pulled in customers, his grin making neighbors laugh. Your father clapped him on the shoulder, calling him a natural businessman. Your mother beamed as if she already saw his future mapped out. Meanwhile, you held up your sketches, waiting for recognition. "That's cute," close quote, your mother said distractedly before turning back to him. The pattern repeated itself endlessly. One summer, Jacob sold handmade bracelets at the community market. He came home with cash spilling from his pockets, and your father proudly pinned his earnings to the refrigerator like a trophy. That same summer, you poured yourself into a little film made on the family camcorder, a quirky tale about a dancing tree. At dinner, you showed it nervously, heart pounding. Your father watched for a moment, muttered "keep at it," close quote, and turned to ask Jacob about sales. Your mother slipped the tape into a drawer, promising to watch it later. She never did. But not everyone overlooked you. Your sister sprawled across your bedroom floor, giggling at your goofy characters. "You're going to make movies someday," close quote, she said with a grin that made you believe. Her encouragement became your anchor. And yet, even her support couldn't erase the sting of being invisible to those whose approval you craved most. Middle school deepened the divide. Jacob joined the debate team, racking up trophies and applause. Your parents never missed a match, their cheers echoing through crowded auditoriums. You, meanwhile, found sanctuary in the film club. Weekends disappeared into editing clips. A detective dog, a bird with a tiny hat, a clumsy magician who always dropped his wand. When your short was chosen for the school assembly, you sat in the back row, scanning the crowd for your family. They weren't there. "We had to take Jacob to tournament," close quote, your mother explained later, her tone flat. One evening, you overheard them in the kitchen. Your father's voice was warm with pride. "Jacob's got a head for business." Your mother agreed. "She's just off in her own world. She'll find her way." Those words wrapped around your chest like a rope. Off in your own world. You returned to your room, grabbed your sketchbook, and drew until your fingers cramped. If they wouldn't see you, you would create something impossible to ignore. High school brought new chapters, but the script never changed. Jacob launched a t-shirt business, selling designs to classmates. Your father called it a game changer, close quote, framing his first order form in the living room like sacred text. You, meanwhile, entered a statewide film contest with a story about a robot baker. Out of hundreds, you won second place. You showed a certificate at dinner, pride burning bright. "That's nice," close quote, your mother said with a quick nod before turning to ask Jacob about his profits. That night, you tucked the certificate into a drawer and stopped sharing your wins. Your art became private, a language spoken only between you and the glowing screen in your room. Your sister would peek in, her hair messy from playing outside, and beg to see your latest animation. "That's amazing," close quote, she'd say, wide-eyed. Her words mattered, but they couldn't erase the silence that met you at the dinner table. College gave you space. In the quiet of libraries and late-night studios, you taught yourself more, creating characters that felt alive. Owls who ran bookshops, turtles who solved puzzles, foxes who baked bread with joy. Each creation was proof you could shape a world of your own, even if your parents never looked. By the time you graduated, Jacob was already building his startup. His name appeared on business panels, his photo plastered on the cover of the city's magazine. He became Burlington's golden child, the proof that your parents' pride was well placed. You, meanwhile, rented a small apartment downtown, scraping by with freelance work. You celebrated quietly when your Fox animation hit 1,000 views online. You signed your first contract with a local ad agency, proof your art could be more than a hobby. But when you mentioned it at dinner, your father brushed it off. "That's good," he said absently, before asking Jacob about his next keynote speech. It stung like a wound that never healed. Every conversation became a rerun of the same message. Jacob was the standard, and you were an afterthought. Still, you kept going. You built stories late into the night, eyes burning from the glow of your screen. You poured yourself into characters who stumbled and rose again, who found courage in being different. Maybe, in some way, you were teaching yourself how to survive. Then came Jacob's birthday. The house buzzed with colleagues and investors, glasses raised in toast. Your father's voice thundered. "To Jacob, the one who makes us proud." The cheer filled the air like confetti. You clutched a leather notebook you had chosen for him, its cover embossed with his initials. But in that moment, you felt less like a sister and more like a guest. Later, in the kitchen, your mother cornered you. "When are you going to settle down with a steady job?" She asked. "Jacob is building an empire. What about you?" You swallowed hard, your throat tight. "I'm doing what I love," you whispered. But she sighed, her eyes drifting back to the glowing room where Jacob stood surrounded by admirers. Your father joined her. "You could learn from him," he said, gesturing toward your brother. "He's got his head on straight." You wanted to scream that your films were gaining recognition, that you were paying your bills, that you were building something real. But their eyes had already turned away. You slipped out to the porch, the cool night air washing over your burning cheeks. Your sister found you there, her voice gentle. "They don't get it. But I do. Your films are amazing." Her support steadied you, but the pressure was suffocating. How long could you keep walking into rooms where you weren't seen? And so you began to pull away. Calls went unanswered. Invitations declined. It wasn't bitterness, it was survival. Because deep down, you were learning the truth. Their approval wasn't a gift you needed to earn. It was a trap that kept you small. So let me ask you, dear listener, have you ever felt invisible in the very place you wanted most to belong? If this story resonates, share it with someone who needs the reminder that their worth is not measured by anyone else's scale. And if you wish to keep walking with us through stories of resilience, a quiet like all the years moved quickly, and with them came a widening gulf between your journey and Jacob's. By the time you were in your mid-20s, his face seemed to be everywhere in Burlington. The city paper placed him on its glossy cover, hailing him as the young visionary reshaping the way businesses reached customers. He wore a crisp suit in the photograph, his confident smile radiating certainty. Your parents clipped the article and pinned it to the fridge, as if it were a medal earned for them too. Every visitor to the house saw it, and your father would proudly tap the page and declare, "That's my son." Your mother echoed his pride, telling neighbors, colleagues, even the grocery clerk about Jacob's brilliance. "He's so focused, so ambitious," she would say, as though every word confirmed his destiny. At family dinners, conversations circled around his app, his latest partnerships, his rising influence in the local business world. And when your name surfaced, it was always in comparison. "She's doing her little projects," your mother would say with a smile that was more polite than genuine. But behind that small smile, your life was quietly taking shape. You had moved into a modest downtown apartment with creaky floors and narrow windows, but to you it was freedom. There, you carved out space for your art. A desk cluttered with sketchpads, an aging laptop glowing late into the night, coffee cups scattered like silent witnesses to your persistence. You were freelancing for local businesses, creating quirky animated shorts that promoted bakeries, bookstores, small cafes. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid bills, and it filled you with a sense of independence. And then came a spark. Your whimsical animation of a fox who ran a bakery crossed 1,000 views online. It might not have seemed like much to the outside world, but to you, it was a sign. People were watching. People cared. For the first time, strangers who had no obligation to love you were moved by what you created. You share the milestone at dinner, expecting maybe a flicker of pride. "That's fun," your mother said with a tight smile. Seconds later, she shifted to Jacob's latest funding round. The subject of you dissolved like mist in the morning sun. Your father's dismissal was harsher. Whenever you explained that animation was your career, not a hobby, he shook his head with that quiet doubt only a parent can carry. "When will you get a real job?" He asked again and again, as though your paychecks, your clients, your growing audience were invisible. And then, without pause, he pivoted back to Jacob's keynote speeches and networking events. The pattern was relentless, and it hurt. It felt as though every small success you nurtured was erased the moment Jacob entered the room. Still, you kept going. You woke early, worked late, poured your heart into characters that lived in whimsical worlds where flaws became strengths and differences were celebrated. In some way, those stories were your rebellion, your quiet answer to a family that only valued one kind of triumph. Then came Jacob's birthday. Your mother's voice over the phone was insistent. You must come. It's important for the family. So you went, gift in hand, a carefully chosen leather notebook embossed with his initials, something meant to honor his endless business ideas. The house was buzzing that evening. Colleagues, investors, friends all gathered to toast Jacob. Laughter rose to the ceilings, and your father's booming voice cut through the noise. To Jacob, the one who makes us proud. Everyone cheered, glasses clinking. You stood in the corner clutching the notebook, your palms damp. The toast landed like a slap, not because it was untrue, but because it once again reduced you to silence. You were not part of the pride. You were a spectator. Later, in the kitchen, your mother pulled you aside. When are you going to settle down with a steady job? Close quote, she asked sharply, her eyes narrowing as though she already doubted your answer. Jacob is building an empire. What about you? Close quote, your throat tightened, but you forced the words out. I'm doing what I love. Her sigh said everything. Your father joined her, gesturing toward the glowing living room where Jacob was surrounded by admirers. You could learn from him, close quote, he said, his tone heavy with expectation. He's got his head on straight. In that moment, you wanted to shout. You wanted to tell them about your clients, about the way children laughed at your animated characters, about how teachers showed your shorts in classrooms, about the hope that pulsed through every frame. But you knew before the words even formed that they would not hear you. So you walked out onto the porch, the laughter muffled by the door. The night air cooled your burning face. And then your sister appeared, her voice soft as she leaned beside you. They're clueless, close quote, she said. Don't let them take this from you. Your films are amazing. Her words were a balm, but they didn't erase the heaviness pressing on your chest. You realized you weren't just fighting your family's blindness, you were fighting a world that seemed to see only Jacob. His name was everywhere. In blogs, in newspapers, in speeches. Your work was seen as cute, close quote, a hobby, something temporary. The contrast was suffocating. And yet, in that suffocation, you discovered resilience. Months later, an email arrived that made your hands tremble. A small film festival wanted to screen your Fox animation. It was your first recognition beyond the internet, a chance to stand among creators you'd admired for years. With hope blooming in your chest, you shared the news over dinner. But your father only shrugged. That's great, close quote, he said, but have you seen Jacob's new office? He's hiring now. Your mother added quickly. You should talk to him. He might have a job for you. The fork in your hand froze midair. A job with Jacob. As if all your years of building stories, all your persistence, all your quiet victories meant nothing. As if your worth existed only in his shadow. That night, lying awake in your apartment, you stared at the ceiling and understood something. Their approval was not the prize you thought it was. It was a trap, designed to keep you tethered, to shrink your victories until they could fit into the mold they recognized. You didn't need that mold. You didn't need the lens. You had your own. And so, you doubled down. You pitched bigger projects, reached out to larger clients, created films that carried both women. After the event, your father pulled you aside. His voice was low, disappointed. Why can't you be more like him? Close quote, for the first time, your answer was steady. Because I'm me. You walked away, leaving his silence behind you. It was a small sentence, but it carried the weight of years. Dear listener, let me ask you. What would you do if your own family measured your worth only through someone else's success? Would you bend yourself into their version of pride, or would you choose the harder path, your own? And if this story makes you think of someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. Sometimes, a story of quiet defiance can remind another soul that they are enough. The evening of Jacob's engagement party shimmered with chandeliers and polished glass. The venue was a high-end restaurant, all velvet drapes and sparkling chandeliers, a place designed to impress. Guests in tailored suits and glittering dresses crowded the room, their laughter swelling as champagne glasses clinked. Jacob stood in the center, Victoria on his arm, a woman whose sharp smile and sharper ambition filled every corner of the space. You entered quietly with Matthew, his hand warm in yours. For a brief moment, you hoped this night would be different, that perhaps your family might notice you not just as Jacob's sibling, but as someone building a life of your own. Yet from the moment you stepped inside, the stage belonged only to Jacob and his fiancée. Victoria commanded attention effortlessly, her voice carrying as she described their wedding plans. A lakeside venue, a guest list stretching longer than a city block, a designer gown that would dazzle under the summer sun. Guests leaned in, enchanted by every detail. Your mother clapped with delight, her eyes brimming with pride, as though she had personally curated the perfection of their future. You try to contribute, mentioning a new animation project you had recently landed with a streaming platform. But before you could finish, your father interrupted, waving his hand. "Let's not bore everyone with that," he said casually, steering the conversation back to Jacob's latest business deal. His words sliced through you like a familiar blade, the kind that wounds without leaving a visible mark. The room roared with laughter again, and you were once more invisible. Matthew squeezed your hand, whispering softly, "Your work's incredible. They don't see it, but I do." His reassurance steadied you, yet it could not erase the sting. Then Victoria turned her attention toward Matthew. Her questions flowed effortlessly. About his career in graphic design, his thoughts on startups, his connections. She laughed too loudly at his comments, her hand resting on his arm a second too long. You watched from across the room, stomach tightening. This wasn't casual curiosity. It was performance. She was redirecting the spotlight, making sure every gaze returned to her and Jacob. You tried to join the conversation, but Victoria steered it toward legal contracts, a subject she knew you could not touch. She smiled, satisfied, as though she had claimed victory in a game you never agreed to play. At dinner, the performance continued. Victoria rose with her glass raised high. "To Jacob, the man building an empire," she declared. "And to a future bigger and brighter than anyone can imagine." The room erupted in applause. Her eyes flicked toward you, a smirk tugging at her lips. The gesture was subtle but deliberate, a reminder that in this carefully staged theater, you were meant to fade into the background. Your father leaned over, his voice low but pointed. "They're a power couple. You could take notes." Your mother chimed in. "It's not too late to find a stable path." Your grip tightened on your fork until your knuckles whitened. The words weren't new, but tonight they felt heavier, echoing across every year you had spent chasing acknowledgement that never came. You excused yourself, retreating to the restroom. The cold water splashed against your face, your reflection blurred by tears you refused to let fall. Your sister found you there, dress wrinkled from dancing, her voice firm. "Victoria is a show-off. You don't need to compete with that." Her words offered comfort, but they could not erase the truth. You had brought Matthew to share a piece of your world, to show that you two were building something worth celebrating. Instead, you had been sidelined again, not just invisible but deliberately diminished. Victoria's charm over Matthew, your parents' silence, their blind adoration for Jacob, it was all a betrayal layered over years of smaller wounds. Back at the table, the conversation buzzed around honeymoons and future ventures. Jacob basked in admiration, Victoria glowed, your parents beamed. And you sat there, shrinking into yourself, until something inside snapped. You pushed back your chair, the scrape loud enough to silence the nearby chatter. "I'm done," you said quietly, your voice carrying farther than you intended. Your mother frowned, whispering urgently, "Don't make a scene." But you no longer cared. Matthew followed as you walked out into the night. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. He wrapped his arm around you, whispering, "You don't have to prove anything to them. You're enough." His words landed with the force of truth, settling into your bones. In that moment, you realized what you had never dared admit. Their approval was not only unattainable, it was a prison. And you were ready to walk free. Weeks later, on a bright afternoon, you and Matthew stood beneath a canopy of oak trees by Lake Champlain. The water shimmered behind you, a handful of friends and a local officiant gathered close. You wore a simple white dress, he wore his favorite flannel shirt, and together you exchanged vows that promised not grandeur but truth. It was not the wedding your family had envisioned. It was better. It was yours. You didn't tell your parents. You didn't invite Jacob. Their absence felt less like a loss and more like freedom. Afterward, at a small brewery strung with fairy lights, you celebrated with Matthew's family and a few close friends. Laughter rang out, toasts were made not to empires but to love, to courage, to building something real. Lindsay, your best friend, pulled you onto the dance floor, her laughter bright as she whispered, "You did it. You built this life, and it's all you." Her words lingered, echoing louder than any cheer your parents had ever withheld. Later, sitting on the floor of your new apartment surrounded by unpacked boxes, Lindsay asked the question directly. "Why didn't you invite them?" You paused, setting down a framed photo of you and Matthew. "Because they turn it into Jacob's story," you said softly. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Then this is better," she replied. And it was. Your studio grew steadily. Projects multiplied, your team expanded, and soon your whimsical characters found homes on bigger screens. A short film about a lost firefly won a regional award. Invitations from larger festivals arrived. You were building something that no dismissal, no comparison, no smirk across a dinner table could erase. One evening on the balcony of your apartment, Matthew asked gently, "Do you regret not telling them about the wedding?" You shook your head. "This was for us, not for them." He pulled you close, and for the first time in years, you felt unshaken certainty. You didn't need their applause. You didn't need their validation. You had chosen yourself, and that choice was enough. So let me ask you, dear listener, have you ever kept something sacred for yourself, knowing others would only turn it into another comparison? 6 months after you and Matthew had exchanged vows under the oak trees by Lake Champlain, life carried a quiet rhythm that felt like home. Your studio buzzed with new projects, your days filled with sketches and laughter, your nights wrapped in the steady comfort of someone who believed in you without conditions. Yet just as your world grew stronger, Jacob's glittering empire began to fracture. The signs were there, even if your parents refused to see them. At Jacob's wedding, held in a grand Burlington hotel with velvet drapes and crystal chandeliers, the spectacle was almost desperate. Guests marveled at the decorations, at the orchestra, at the cake taller than a person. But behind the glamour, whispers floated. Investors were pulling out. Funding was drying up. Beneath the chandeliers, you felt unease curling in your stomach. Before the ceremony, your father pulled you into a quiet hallway. His face was tense, the lines around his mouth deeper than you remembered. "Jacob's in trouble," he confessed, voice low. "The company's bleeding cash. We need you to help. Maybe some of your studio profits." Your heart thudded in your chest. After years of being dismissed, after every time they had called your work a hobby, they now saw it as a resource, a safety net for the son they had placed on a pedestal. You shook your head, your voice firm. "I've built my own life. I can't rescue his." Your father's eyes narrowed, anger flickering behind them, but you walked away, your hands trembling. Back in the ballroom, Jacob and Victoria basked in the glow of admiration, while you carried the weight of what had just been asked of you. As the night unfolded, the pressure mounted. At the reception, with golden tablecloths and a live band playing jazz, Victoria floated from guest to guest, her smile polished, her answers vague whenever questions about Jacob's company grew too pointed. Your mother fussed over her like royalty, adjusting her veil, whispering encouragements. You sat at the edge of the room, the glitter of chandeliers above you feeling more like a cage than light. Later, your parents approached again. The band had paused, leaving their voices to carry. "This wedding is perfect," your father said, gesturing to the dazzling hall. "Jacob has done everything right. When are you going to catch up?" It was the same wound, reopened, sharp as ever. Your mother's lips pressed into line as she waited for your answer. You stood, your chair scraping against the polished floor. "I'm not chasing your version of perfect," you said clearly, your voice trembling but strong. "I got married last year. A small ceremony, no fuss. You weren't invited." Their faces froze, your father's jaw tightening, your mother's eyes widening. A few heads turned. Victoria's smile faltered across the room. "But you didn't stop. I've built my own life, my own studio. I don't need your approval. And I'm done trying to fit your mold." For the first time, the silence in the room belonged to you. You grabbed your coat, walked out into the crisp night, and never looked back. Matthew was waiting outside by the truck. He didn't ask questions. He simply opened the door, squeezed your hand, and drove you home. The city lights blurred past, and with them, the weight of years began to lift. That night was more than an exit from a wedding. It was the end of chasing scraps of pride, the end of living beneath comparisons that had stolen your joy. Months later, Jacob's empire collapsed completely. News outlets reported the unraveling. Risky expansions, poor investments, lawsuits piling up. His app went offline, his office shuttered. Photos surfaced of him standing outside his old headquarters, tie loosened, face gaunt, the golden boy reduced to shadows. Victoria didn't stay. She moved to Boston, taking a job at a law firm, leaving Jacob to face the wreckage alone. Their marriage, built on ambition and performance, dissolved like sugar in water. When you read the articles, you felt no triumph. Just a hollow ache. His downfall wasn't your victory. It was simply another truth revealed that perfection built on fragile ground cannot stand. Your mother's call came next, her voice sharp with anger. "You could have helped him," she accused. "Your studio is doing well. Why didn't you step up?" You tried to reply, "That was his responsibility, not mine," but she hung up before you could finish. An email from your father followed, long and bitter. He claimed you had turned your back on family, that your refusal had pushed Jacob further into ruin. "We're done," he wrote, cold and final. You stared at the screen, waiting for guilt to consume you. It didn't. Instead, you felt something like release. The words were simply another attempt to make you small, to make you carry burdens that were never yours. You deleted the message, blocked the numbers, and stepped into silence. It was heavy at first, that quiet. But with time, it felt right, like finally closing a door you should never have left open. Your days filled with creation. The studio thrived, your team growing as projects poured in. A short film about a bird learning to fly against the wind won praise at a festival. Emails arrived from clients in distant cities, from voices that saw what your family never had. Your sister remained your lifeline, texting you silly memes, calling late at night to talk about your projects. "I saw your Firefly film," she said once, excitement in her voice. It was incredible. Her words mattered more than she knew. Eventually, she asked to meet at a cafe downtown. Steam curled from mugs of coffee as she leaned across the table. "They're wrong to blame you," she said. "Jacob made his choices. They can't see it, but I can." Her honesty cut through years of doubt. She admitted she had watched your parents idolize Jacob, blind to his flaws. "You did what you had to," she added. "I'm proud of you." Walking home afterward, the sky grey above you, you realized her words mirrored the truth you had carried alone for so long. You didn't lose your family, you released them. And in doing so, you found herself. Life continued, quieter but fuller. Matthew's steady presence, Lindsay's laughter from Boston, your team's energy in the studio, these became your family. Bonds built not on obligation, but on choice. Love, respect, and shared dreams replaced the hollow hunger for parental approval. Your parents never reached out again. Regret lived in the house, your sister told you. But pride kept them silent. And you, too full of your own world, no longer lingered on their absence. One evening, as the sun dipped below Lake Champlain, you sat on the balcony with Matthew. He handed you a mug of tea, his smile warm. "You've built something incredible," he said. And for once, you didn't doubt it. Because your life was no longer measured against someone else's empire. It was measured in quiet mornings, in laughter-filled studios, in stories told through animations that reached hearts you'd never meet. So now, dear listener, let me ask you. Have you ever walked away from the expectations that chained you and found freedom on the other side? Looking back, you realize the greatest shift wasn't Jacob's fall or your parents' silence, it was the moment you stopped waiting for their validation. For years, you believed love had to be earned, measured against achievements that were never yours to claim. But in choosing yourself, in choosing Matthew, in choosing the quiet joy of creating stories that mattered, you discovered a freedom that no comparison could steal. Your family's absence no longer defined you. What defined you were the mornings filled with sketches, the